Okay, we begin the Gemara today on Daf Samach Daled Amud Beis, 8 lines up from the bottom of the Amud where it says Lememra. So this Gemara here is going to explain what it said in our Mishnah. There was a machlokes between Rab Meir and Rab Yosi. When a person is Mekadesh's daughter and he tells the man that I'm being Mekadesh you to my Gedola, my older daughter, and he doesn't specify which daughter this is. So now, what he said is unclear. So Rab Meir says that if he had two sets of daughters, from an older wife and a younger wife, so then it could be any of these daughters besides the youngest. The Ketana Shabaketana is, that's for sure in no way the Gedola. On the other hand, Rabbi Yosi says, it doesn't work that way. When a person says a term, he means the one that's clear. He's not saying something in a way that it could be any of these daughters that is not clear. So what he meant is the Gedola Shabaketanas. Any of the other ones are not in the Suffolk Bechlal. Because when a person speaks, he speaks clear. He means what the one that's clear. Okay, so here the Gemara brings a contradiction from another place where Rab Meir and Rab Yosi seem to be arguing about a similar concept, and there the opinions are reversed. Zok the Gemara, lememre, shall we say, that Rab Meir's opinion is that the way a person speaks, he says things in a way, and he means, and he's referring to something, even if his words end up being unclear. But a person speaks that way. Got it? 8 lines from the bottom. Rabbi Yosi savar, and Rabbi Yosi says, no, a person does not speak in such a way. When a person says something, he only means what's clear. But that can't be, because we learn the opposite, and this is a Gemara in Nedarim, where a person makes a neder and it's unclear what he meant by this. The Tanan, the Mishnah says, Hanoider Ada Pesach. Person says, I make a neder not to have hana from you, and he says, until when is my neder? Until Pesach. So what does the term Ada Pesach mean? Aser Achi Yagia. He'll be aser to have hana from that person until Pesach arrives. What's if he said something a little different? Achi Yehei Pesach. Until it will be Pesach. What does that term mean? So then, Aser Achi Yetze. Then he'll be Aser to have hana until Pesach ends. Yehei means until the whole Pesach is done. Now then comes a lashon which is not clear. What's if he says, At Pnei Pesach? I'm Aser to have hana from you until Pnei Pesach. What does the word Pnei Pesach mean? Rab Meir Aser Achi Yagia. Rab Meir says that he's only going to be Aser until the day of Pesach arrives. The word Pnei, so Rashi explains, what does the word Pnei mean? Pnei sounds like either it could be the first day, which is before. Pnei means like before. So either the word Pnei could be the first day, which is before the other 7 days of Pesach, or Pnei could be the last day or the second to last day, which is before the last day. So Pnei could be all the beginning or towards the end. So it's not clear what his lashon is. So Rav Meir says when it's not clear, we say that it means until Pesach arrives, the beginning. Rabbi Yosi says because it's not clear, so it includes the entire Pesach. So what do you see over here? Over here you see the exact opposite. Rav Meir says that when a person uses this kind of term which is not clear, so we say that we go to the beginning, that we're not going to have a suffix with any of the other following days of Pesach. We say he probably meant the beginning because that's the simplest and the clearest of what he could have meant. Person does not put himself into a suffix that maybe he meant to include the following days of Pesach as well. Rabbi Yosi is the one that says that maybe in this term of Pnei, it does include maybe the other days of Pesach, even though when you come to the middle of Pesach, there's already other days before it, but there's also days after it. So Rabbi Yosi is the one that says that the word Pnei could be in an unclear way, even in the middle of Pesach. So it's mamish the opposite of what we had over here. So the Gemara says, you're right, Omer Rab Chanina bar Rav Dimi, Omer Rav Muchlefes Hashita. We're going to have to switch the names of Rab Meir and Rab Yosi in that Mishnah there, in Masechta Nedarim. It has to be switched. And the Gemara brings a Braisa clearly that says this. Vatanya, as we learned in the Braisa, Zeh Klal, the rule here is as follows. Kol Shezmane Kavua, if a person is referring to a certain set time period, Va'omar At Pnei, and he uses this term of At Pnei. Rab Meir is the one that said that you go until the end of Pesach, and Rab Yosi and Rab Yosi says no, that Pnei means the first day, what's clear, which is the first, which is before everything else. And like we said over here, benegay to the Gedola Shabbat, that the term Gedola only means the oldest and not any of the other ones. Okay, now the Gemara clarifies another point regarding our Mishnah. So again, the case of our Mishnah was when this man has 2 wives. The older one with 2 daughters, the younger one with 2 daughters. That's our assumption right now. And now the question is, when you say Gedaila, does Gedaila mean the oldest one or means the oldest in contrast to the younger group? So that was the point of our Mishnah. So now Amar Abaye says about our Mishnah, Machloikis, the whole argument here about this case is Bishtei Kite Bonis. It's when this man has 2 sets of daughters from 2 wives. Avol Bekatachas, what if he has 1 set of daughters? He only has 1 set of daughters from 1 wife. Meaning, let's say this person has 3 daughters from 1 wife. Then, Divri Akayel, everybody will agree, Gedaila means Mamish. When he says Gedaila, it means the oldest daughter. And Ketana means Mamish. And when he said Ketana, it means the youngest daughter. And Tzois, now if there's any daughter in the middle, a 3rd daughter which is in the middle, Bishma Karila. That middle daughter is not called not Gedaila and not Ketana. What's the middle daughter referred to? He would refer to this middle daughter by name. It's not referred to. He has the Gemara here. It's okay. It's okay. Okay, there's other Gemaras over there. So what is the term Emtsais refer to? The term Emtsais refers to, he'll refer to the Emtsais with the name. Okay, in other words, the point that Abai is saying is, only when you have 2 different groups, then you could say that the term Gedaila either means Gedaila of another daughter, or Gedaila also means in contrast to another group which is younger. But within the same group, when you have a middle daughter, over here you're not going to say that the middle daughter is considered to be Gedaila. There's one that's older than her. The middle daughter he refers to by name. So Ravacha asks Abaye about this. Well, how are we to understand what it said in our Mishnah? Ela meyata. If so, in the case of our Mishnah, so now of Acha bar Masna assumed that in our Mishnah, when it spoke about the 2 groups, it could also possibly be that the 2 groups have more than 2 daughters. If the older group has 3 daughters, maybe the younger group also has 3 daughters. We were assuming till now that the older group has 2 and the younger group has 2. But he's saying, who said? Maybe in our Mishnah the older group has 3 and the younger group also has 3. So if so, Emtsois shebekat shniya, the middle daughter in the second group, Tishtiri, should be allowed should be allowed because we should say that the middle one doesn't go into the suffix at all. So his question is that from our Mishnah, what did it say in our Mishnah? What did it say in our Mishnah? In our Mishnah it said that according to Rab Meir, only the youngest of all the daughters will be mutter. Only the youngest doesn't go into the category of Gedailish or Begdailis. But it's mashma that any of the other daughters does go into the suffix, and that would include even a middle daughter as well. So when you have the second group, and you have that middle daughter, even though there's a daughter that's older than her, and there's one that's younger, I still have a suffix to say that this could be considered to be the Gedaila. So how could Abaye say that within one group, when you have the middle one, she doesn't go into the suffix, and because the father would refer to the middle one by name. So Abaye answered, Hacha b'maya skinon. What is our Mishnah speaking about? B'she'ein sham ela gedaila ketana. The case of our Mishnah is that the older group and the younger group only have 2 daughters. There's a gedaila and a ketana. There is no middle one. If there would have been a middle one, taket, she would not be in the suffix. It's logical to say that in our Mishnah there is no middle one. Because if there is a middle one, listen, let the Mishnah mention it. The Mishnah went through all the details. The Mishnah said that when you say Gedaila, there's a suffix, maybe it's the oldest one, maybe it's the second, maybe it's the third. The Mishnah didn't mention anything about the middle one. Why didn't the Mishnah mention it? So the Gemara asks on this raya, all the time, according to your proof that you're telling me now, that the Mishnah doesn't mention anything about the middle one. So how about Emtsois shebekat rishayna? The middle one, if there's 2 groups over here, and the older group has 3, and there's a middle one in the older group, the vadai sveike va'asirele, that older one in the middle group, again, the middle one that is, the middle one in the older group would definitely be part of the suffix because she's older in contrast to the younger group. So over here, definitely she goes into the suffix, mikatanila. Does the Mishnah mention that there's a middle one in the older group? The Mishnah doesn't mention it, even though it's clear that she would be in the suffix as well. So if the Mishnah didn't mention that, the fact that it didn't mention a middle one in the younger group is not a proof that our Mishnah is a case where there is no middle one. It was makatzer. In the older group, it didn't mention the middle one, so maybe in the younger group, it also doesn't mention the middle one, even though there is a middle one there. But the Gemara says you can't compare these 2 things. Can't compare the middle one in the older group and the middle one in the younger group. Hachi hashta, there's no comparison here. Hasam tone ketane didali isura. When it comes to the older group, it says that even the youngest one of the older group is going to be aser. So from that, it's self-understood that if there's a middle one that's older than the youngest one in the older group, is also going to be aser. Because the point is that all the daughters in the older group are older than the younger group. So that the Mishnah doesn't have to spell out those details. That's obvious. But when it comes to the younger group, so what makes them older? Not older in contrast to any other group. It's only older in contrast to the youngest one in this group. If it's true that there is a middle one here in this group, and even the middle one is referred to as an older one, that's a chiddush. Nisnei. The Mishnah should have said that clearly. So the fact that the Mishnah doesn't say this is an indication that there is no middle one here in the younger group. If there would have been a middle one in the younger group, she would not be in the suffix. And we would say, like Abaya said, that this one, the father would have referred to by name. But now the Gemara asks, based on what we brought before from Pesach, but Pesach, going back to the machlokes of Rab Meir and Rab Yosi regarding Pesach, where the man made a neder that I'm not going to have anah until Pesach, and he used the term at Pnei Pesach. And the question is, does it mean the first day of Pesach? Does it mean the end of Pesach? Now, what's Pesach? Pesach has a bunch of days. There's the first day, there's the last day, and there's a bunch of middle days as well. So in that case of Pesach, Tichikat Achaz Dami, you could compare that case to over here, one group of daughters that are all from one wife, Upligi, and over there, Rab Meir and Rab Yosi are arguing about all these days of Pesach. Why shouldn't you say that if he meant the middle day of Pesach, he would have pointed out the middle day? Just like Abaye said regarding one group of daughters, if it was the middle daughter, then the husband would have spelled out, this is the one by name. So by Pesach as well, the suffix should only be regarding the first day and the last day, but not regarding any of the middle days. Amalei, so Rav answered him, Hossam, over there, actually, the pshat of the machlokes and Rav Meir, Rav Yosi is different. Belishne de alma kamiflagi. There, the basis of the argument is regarding how you translate the word penei. He said, I'm going to be osted to you at Pnei HaPesach. Over there, the argument is, what does the word Pnei mean? Mar Sovar at Pnei HaPesach. What does Pnei HaPesach mean? At Kame Pischa. Pnei means before Pesach. So that's the beginning of Pesach. Umar Sovar, and the other opinion is Ad Mifni Pischa. The word Pnei also has another expression, like you say, Panayayin, the day has ended. Mifni Pischa, when Pesach is over. It's Pashar HaMachlokes regarding the translation of the word Penei. So therefore, it includes all the middle days of Pesach as well. If Mifni Pischa means until the end of Pesach, so that means only when Pesach is over. Okay, so it's a completely different machlokes. I didn't look into Mefarshim about this, but according to the pshat that the Gemara says right now, you don't have to say anymore what the Gemara said before, Mechlefes Hashita, that we have to switch the opinions of Rab Meir and Rab Yosi regarding this to fit with, or maybe, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, Kapanim here the Gemara is saying a new pshat in Pnei Pesach, that it's a question in the taich of the word, and therefore it includes even all the middle days of Pesach if it means the end of Pesach, when Pesach is over. A person says to a woman, Kidashticha, I was Mekadesh, you're my wife. And she argues back and says, no, like Kidashtani, never happened. You never were Mekadesh me. So what happens? Who asa b'krevisel? So he now becomes asa to any of her relatives. So, in other words, even if you would give her a get, what happens is, so a woman's relatives becomes asa to this man, her mother, her sister, all kinds of relatives become asa. He says that he was Mekadesher. There's a klal in halacha, shavya nafshech haticha d'isura. You could say something to make it asa on you, even if for someone else it won't be asa, but if you say it's asa for you, it's asa. So for him, he'll be asa to all of her relatives, but vihi muteres b'kreivav. She, though, will be mutter to all of his relatives because she's saying this never happened. And there's no proof that it did happen. So for her, everything is mutter here. Same thing in the reverse. He meres kidashtani. If she comes and says to a man, you are mekadesh me, and the man says, no, never happened. I never was mekadesh you. So then the reverse is true. Who mutter b'krevi? He'll be mutter in all of her relatives. And she says that she's asa, so she'll be asa to all of his relatives. A third case, which is also similar, the Gemara is going to explain why the Mishnah needs all these cases. Kidashticha, a person comes to a woman and says, I was Mekadesh you, Vihiyeh Meres, and she says, it wasn't me, like Kidashta Elabiti, you were Mekadesh my daughter. So who asa b'krayvas gedayla? So the man is going to be asa to the krayva of the mother, which the Mishnah refers to as the gedayla, because he says that he was mekadesher. Or gedayla muteres b'krayva, but she, this mother, will be mutter to all of his relatives. She says, I never got married to you. Now, who mutter b'krayva is katana? The man which says, I wasn't mekadesh your daughter, so he's going to be mutter to the relatives of his daughter. Or katana muteres b'krayvav, and the katana will be mutter with all of his relatives. So the point there is the one that asers, he's the one that took this isra on himself, so he's asr, but not the other individual. The fourth case, that is also again similar thing. If the man comes and says, "Kedashti es bitcha," I was mekadesh your daughter. V'hiya emet like kedashta elo isi, and she says, "No, you mekadesh me." So then, who also b'krevis katana? He's saying he was mekadesh the daughter, the katana. So he'll be also with the relatives of the katana. Or katana muteres b'krevav, and the katana will be mutter and all of his relatives. Who mutter b'krevis gedayla, and he's going to be mutter with all of the relatives of the Gedayla, and Gedayla, Surah B'Krayvav, she says that he was Mekadesh her, so she's going to be Yasser and all of his relatives. Yes, we have 4 cases in the Mishnah, which is saying basically the exact same point. So the Gemara right away explains this. So first starting with the first 2 cases of the Mishnah. When he says he was Mekadesh her, and she says no, and the opposite, when he says and she says no. It's the 2 cases over here. So what is the reason the Mishnah has to say both of these cases? What the Mishnah had to say both of these cases. The Mishnah would only say the case where the husband, the man, said that I was mekadesh you, and then the Mishnah says that he's also, but she's mutter and everything, and the reason why she would be mutter is mishum de gavre lo ichpaslei. A man, it's not so bothersome for him to come along and say that I was mekadesh this woman. Umikri Omar, and it could be that he should say such a thing even if it's not true. And the reason for this is, even after a man says that he was mekadesh a certain woman, it doesn't keep him locked out from marrying anyone else. He still can go and marry another woman as well. So for him to come along and say that I was mekadesh this woman, even if he's not sure that this is actually the one that he was mekadesh, it could happen that he would say such a thing. So therefore, he'll be yasser, but she will not be yasser. We're not going to trust him. Avol ihi. But if it's the reverse case, if it's the woman that comes and says, you were mekadesh me, Eime, over here I would say, Ilav the kimlo b'dibura, if not that she knows that this is true, Le'avis amra, v'litzer ihu b'krevi, she wouldn't have said such a thing. Reason is because the moment she says, you were mekadesh me, what happens? She now becomes asa to the entire world. She can't marry anybody until she gets a get from this man. She's really locking herself up by this. So in such a case, maybe her words should be trusted so much that that maybe even the man should become asa, even though he's disagreeing with her. Kamash Malon, therefore the Mishnah has to say that even in this case, only she's asa, but he's not asa. And then the Mishnah said the case, when a man says, I was Mekadesh you, and she says, no, you weren't Mekadesh me, you were Mekadesh my daughter. Why is it bringing this case? Hasu lamali, why does it have to say this third case? It says the Gemara, Itztrich, the Kidushin in this case here is as follows. I would think to say as follows. A father is believed to say that you were Mekadesh my daughter. And this is the Gemara we learned before, that it says, Biti nasati le'ish hazeh, that a father is believed to say that I was Mekadesh my daughter. But maybe I would think, Midrabanan hemnu ledida. Even though a mother is not believed, but maybe midrabanan, a mother is believed to say that you were Mekadesh my daughter, and the titza brata b'dibura, and therefore the daughter should become aser through the words of the mother. Kamash Malon, therefore the Mishnah has to say that no, the daughter does not become aser with the mother's words. That minatayra, a father is believed, and a mother is not believed at all to say anything about the status of her daughter. Then there was the 4th case of the Mishnah, Kidashti es bitcha, when a man says, I was Mekadesh your daughter, and the mother says, no, you were Mekadesh me. B'chulu hasu lamali. Why is the Mishnah bringing this 4th case? So here, regarding this 4th case, the Gemara says, it's like a no chiddush here. I did it taninami ha. Just like when it came to the first 2 cases, it said the case where the man said, and the woman disagreed, and then it said the case where the woman said that you were Mekadesh, and the man disagreed. So when it comes to the case of the daughter and the mother, it also says both sides, even though the second side that is not, there's no specific chiddush in this. So the Gemara Itmer, we learned the machlokes regarding our Mishnah. Rav Omar, Rav says, Kaifin, we forced the man to give her a get. Shmuel Omar, Shmuel says, we can't force him to give a get, mevakshin. We request him to be nice and give her a get, even though he may not want to give the get. Okay, so now it's not clear regarding which case, we have 4 cases here in our Mishnah. It's not clear regarding which case of our Mishnah this machlokes is. So the Gemara says, Ahai, on what case are they arguing about? If this would be going on the very first case of the Mishnah. What's the first case? The man said I was Makadosh you, and the woman disagrees. The woman says, never happened. Says the Gemara, it can't be. Lav kaifinike, v'loim mevakshinike. Over here, you don't have to force the man to give a get, and you don't have to request of him to give a get, because she doesn't need any get. She's not asa to anybody. She disagrees and she's not asa. This must be referring to the next case of the Mishnah. What was the next case? Where she says that you were Makadosh me, and the man disagrees. So the man is mutter, but she, because she made herself asa, she's going to be asa. Says the Gemara, so if so, Rav's opinion is not understood. The opinion, Shmuel, that says that we ask of the man to please give her a get, l'chayeh, to life, meaning, okay, that makes sense. Rashi explains, the point of here is, the moment a man gives a get to a woman, he becomes asa to all of her relatives. So what's if a man comes along and says, this woman got some bug in her head and says that I was Mekadosh her, and now she wants me to give her a get, and as a result, they won't be able to marry any of her relatives. What's if I want to marry one of her relatives? I'm not interested in giving her a get. Why should I now become asa to marry any of her relatives? So we're going to request of him to be nice and do it anyways. So that makes sense. But Ella Kaifin, but what Rav says that we force the man to give her a get, amai. Why should we? How do we have the right to force a man to give her a get just because she has this mishigas in her head that this man was Mekadosh me? Omar, the man comes and says, Leinichali, the itza bekreva. I'm not interested in giving her a get, and then as a result, I'll become asa to marry any of her relatives. So therefore the Gemara says, Elo shmaitase ahadodi yitma. Really, there's no machlekes here between Rav and Shmuel. They both said different points which are mashlim one another. They're both going on this case where the woman says that I'm usher and the man disagrees, and they both said points that are mashlim one another. And the Gemara explains that Amar Shmuel said, Mevakshin mimeno litin get. We ask of the man to be nice and give her a get. We can't force him, we could only ask. And then on that, Rav adds, Omar Rav, what happens if Nosan get me atzmai? What happens if, even without us asking, the man comes and offers to give her a get on his own initiative? Then Kaifin means we're going to force him not only to give the get, but now he's going to have to pay the ksuba. And the reason for this is if he's coming and offering to give a get, that's an indication that what she said is true. And he's divorcing her as his wife. And therefore he's going to have to actually pay the ksuba for this. Itmanami Amarav Acha Barada Amarav Amrilo Amarav Acha Barada Amarav Amnuna Amarav. This is exactly what Rav said. Rav said Kaifin, we force the man, umevakshin, and we request of him. So now Rav said both. So the Gemara explains, Tarti, could it be both that we force and we request? So Elamai, the pshat is like we just said, Hachikama. The pshat is mevakshin mimenu litin get. In a case where she says that you married me and he disagrees, we could only request of him to give the get. But if he on his own initiative comes and gives her a get, then we see it's true. Then we're going to force him to give a ksuba. That's what Rav said. Now the Gemara brings the completely other halacha, which is going to be connected to our Mishnah. This is a very general point regarding Kidushin. Rav Yehuda said, if you mekadesh a woman and there's only one witness present, there's no Kidushin. You must have two eidim for Kidushin. What's if you have just one aid, but both the husband and the wife are agreeing that there was a Kidushin there? So you have the haidah of both of them with this one aid. So is that good enough? So what happened? He didn't give a clear answer. He said in v'lo, he said maybe yeah, maybe no, v'rafya biyadeh. This was unclear in his hands. So the point basically is, Rashi says, we'll see soon in the Gemara also, there's the Gzeir Shava that you learn out, Dovar from money. By money matters, it says, Al Pishnai Medim Yakum Dovar, that you have to have two Eidim. The question is, do you learn out by Kiddushin that there is no Kiddushin without two Eidim? Or maybe no, by money matters, if a person is Maida, there's a klal, Haydas Baldin Kime Eidim Dami. If you're Maida, you don't need two Eidim. So if the husband and wife are both Maida here, so maybe one Eid is good enough. So we learned about this. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel Amakadesh Beidecha. The person that's makadesh with one witness, Ein Chayshon LeKidusha. We don't pay attention. This Kiddushin is nothing. That's even in a case that they're both agreeing that there was a Kiddushin here. Eisvei Rava Rav Nachman. So that now in this psak din, Rav asks Rav Nachman, Ha'imili Isha. Going back now to our Mishnah. So a person says to a woman, Kidashticha, I was Mekadesh you. Vihi Meres, and she argues and says, no, loy Kidashtani never happened. You were not Mekadesh me. So what did the Mishnah say? Who asa b'krev Yisrael? He'll be asa and her relatives, and v'imot b'krev, and she's permitted to his relatives. Now the question is, don't you need Edom here? If, like Shmuel just said, or Rav Nachman just said, that you have to have Edom over here, amay muteres b'kreivov. Why would she be mutter and his relatives if she is disagreeing with this? There's Edom here. If the man says that he was Mekadesh and we're accepting what the man says, there must have been Edom here. Otherwise, there's nothing to be concerned about. And v'idilek Edom, if there's no Edom here, amay asa b'krev Yisrael, why would he be Asar and her relative? There's no Edom here. El alav, don't you think the pshat in our Mishnah is as follows? Be'ed echad, there is one aid that's saying that this Kidushin happened, and hacha b'mayaskinon, sorry again, that's already the answer. El alav be'ed echad, there's one aid, and therefore the man that agrees to this aid and says that I was Mekadesh you, for him it'll be an Isser, because you have his Eidos Baldin together with the aid. But for the woman that's not agreeing to the aid, it will not be a Kidushin. So this only makes sense if there's one aid. Says the Gemara, no, that's not the case. The case in our Mishnah is Hacha b'mayaskina and kagoin da'ama law. The man comes and says to this woman, Kidashticha b'fnei ploini u'ploini. I was Mekadesh you in front of these two individuals, Eidim. And Nabahol Cholehem le'Medina Sayam. They went overseas, they're gone, they're not here, but the Kidushin took effect with Eidim. And she says, those two people, they were never there. So there were Eidim, but they're just gone. That's the case of a Mishnah. The Gemara brings another case. It says in the Mishnah, this is in Gittin, we learned this, Eisvei hamegarish asishtei. Person divorced his wife. But then, Velona imoy bepundiki. But then he spent the night with her in an inn. Now, over here, there's a concern. Maybe he had a relation with her. That if there was bia, and this bia, and that night in the inn was l'shem Kidushin, so maybe she's going to need a get a second time. So b'shami imrim ein etzrichei men a get. Sheni. She doesn't need a second get. We have no concern about this. There is a concern. Maybe there was a bia again, and maybe it was l'shem Kidushin, and therefore you need a second get. So now here comes up again the subject of Eidim. Hey Chidami, what is this case over here that they spent this night together in an inn? If there are Eidim that saw that they had bia and it was l'shem Kidushin, so then my Tamai the Beshame. Why would Beshame say that they would not need a get? V'idilek Eidim, and if there's no Eidim there, so then my Tamai the Besilo. Why would Besilo say that they need a second get? There's no Eidim. Elalav. So again, don't you think that what's the case over here? Be'eid echad, there was one aid. And what's the machlokes? The man is agreeing to the aid that there was a Kiddushin, or maybe both of them are agreeing that there was a Kiddushin. And Beis Shammai says that such a kind of Kiddushin with one aid does not work, but Beis Hillel says it does. So from here you see that according to Beis Hillel, a Kiddushin with one aid would be a Kiddushin. So the Gemara asks on this pshat, or on this question that we asked here, according to your reasoning, if this is the pshat in that Mishnah, aim is seifa. What does it say there in the next part of that Mishnah? Umaydim, that Beis Hillel will agree benizgarsha mina edison, that if this man and a husband and wife here, if the divorce was from edison, just from this first stage of marriage, they never lived together before, then in such a case she'ein tzricha menu get sheni, that even if they spent the night together in the inn, you don't need a second get, because the man is not comfortable with the woman, so we're not concerned that maybe they had a relation together. But now the question is, if it's like the pshat that you just said, that there is one aid here, and we trust one aid, if they're agreeing to the aid, so then mali min ha'erisin, mali min ha'nesuin. Why should there be any distinction if they were husband and wife and they were fully married, or they were not fully married? What difference does it make? We have now one aid that saw that there was a bia here. Elo, says the Gemara, the pshat of that Mishnah is different, and there's no right to the discussion that we have here. What are we talking about over here? Going to Ike Eidei Yichud. There are Eidim here, but there's only Eidim that they were secluded together. But Veleke Eidei Bia. There's no Eidim for the act that they actually were together. So here's the machlokes. Bishamai's opinion is Lo Yamrinon Hein Eidei Yichud Hein Eidei Bia. We're not going to say that those Eidim that see that they were secluded together are equivalent to Eidim that saw the actual Bia. They may have been together secluded, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they had any relation with one another. But Rabbi Silo say, Amrina, what we say is, Heinen Eidei Yichud and Heinen Eidei Bia. That if we know that they were secluded together, we know that they had a relation with one another, and therefore these are considered to be Eidim for the Kidushin. So there were Eidim here. And on that, the Mishnah there says, but Umaydim Vadai, Basil agrees, Benizgashim and Edison, that if the divorce was from Edison, so this man and wife would never live together, we're not going to say that the Edom of their seclusion is equivalent to Edom of them being together, because he's not comfortable with her, so we're not concerned that he was together with her. So that Mishnah has nothing to do with our discussion here. HaMekadesh be'ed echad, you mekadesh a woman in the presence of one aid, ein chayshin l'kedushav. There's nothing to be concerned about this Kidushin. Even if the man and woman both agree that there was a Kidushin here, there is no Kidushin. Rabbi Barafuna also said, HaMekadesh be'ed echad, the person that's mekadesh with one aid, be'din rabbe, the great Bezdin says, Omri said, ein chayshin l'kedushav. There's nothing to be concerned about this Kidushin. Now, Mam Beidin Rabba, who's this great Bezdin? Rav. This is Rav. Another version to this is Amar Rabba Baravuna, Amar Rabba Mekadesh Beid Echad, Beidin Rabba, Amri Ein Choshen L'Kidushav, Mam Beidin Rabba, who's this great Bezdin? Rebbe. This was Rebbe, which was actually Rav's teacher. Okay, so far we have over here the conclusion in the Gemara that with one aid, there's no Kiddushin. You must have two aidim. So now here the Gemara is going to ask one last question on this. Most of Rav Achta by Barami. So here there's a very interesting brayso with the following story. Shnayim shebo mimedina sayam. You have two people, two men that are coming from overseas into a city. V'isha imam, and there's one woman with them. V'chavili imam, and there's a chavila, there's a suitcase. There's something that they have with them. And now each one of them is saying something else about what their identity is. Zeh oimer, one person comes along and says, Zu ishti, this is my wife, and v'zeh avdi, this is my slave, and v'zu chavilasi, and this is my bag, or this is my suitcase here. It all belongs to me. V'zeh ayimeh, the other man says, no, Zu ishti, this is my wife, v'zeh avdi, and this person is my slave, and v'zu chavilasi, and this is my suitcase. And v'isha imeres, and the woman comes and says, no, it all belongs to her. Elu shnei avdi, these are my two slaves, and v'chavila shali, and this is my suitcase here. So what do? We don't have any clear testimony about the identity of these people and the ownership of this chavila here. So the halacha is tzricha shnei gitin. She's going to have to receive a get from both of these men that each claim that she's their wife. Ve'goyve ksubasa min chavila, and then mimanavshach she can get her ksubah from this chavila because she says it's her chavila, so the whole thing should be hers. Hers, that is. But even according to what they say that she is their wife. So if they have to divorce her now, so then according to both of them, they have to pay her a ksuba from this chavila. So Mamanavshach, she's going to get the amount of the ksuba from this chavila. Now Rashi says that doesn't mean she's going to get the entire chavila. The portion of this chavila, which is the value of her ksuba, she's going to get. The remainder of the chavila remains a suffix. We don't know if whose it is. Okay, that's the halach of the Braisa. So now this the Gemara asks, Hey Chidami, what are we talking about over here? We have a suffix who she's married to, so what is the case here? This leisadi lahai is the case that these two people, these two men that are saying that this is my wife, each one is bringing Eidim to prove that she was married to them. Mi matzi amra elu shnei avdi. How could it be that she could then argue and say that no, these are my two slaves and this chavila belongs to me? There's Eidim here that say that she's the wife of one of them. Elalav, don't you think the case over here is be'eid echad? The case over here is that there's one aid, and that one aid is saying that she's the wife of him, and there's another aid saying that she's the wife of the other person. So there are two aid echads that are basically contradicting each other, and therefore in such a case, we're going to rely on an Eid Echad to say that there's a Kidushin. The Eid Echad is saying so, and there's one man that's agreeing to the one Eid Echad, and there's another man that's agreeing to the other Eid Echad, and based on that, we're going to say that there's a Kidushin. And therefore, she's going to get only the portion of the Chavila, which is the Ksube, but the remainder she's not going to get. Because when it comes to money matters, Eid Echad is not believed. That's the point the Gemara is trying to say now. When it comes to Kiddushin, we're going to believe the Eid Echad. So she's going to need a get. And she's going to get the Ksubah Mimanavshach of that value that there is in this Chavila. But when it comes to money matters, we never believe in Eid Echad. You always have to have two Eidim. So therefore she's arguing that it all belongs to me. So then that's still going to be a suffix. And the remainder of the Chavila is still going to be a suffix. So l'chayre here we see that you don't need two Eidim for Kiddushin. Says the Gemara, this can't be the pshat in this brayse. V'tizbara, is this logical? Eid echad b'hakchoshe mi mehemen. When you have one eid echad that's contradicting another eid echad, do we pay attention to any of the words of these two eid echads that are contradicting each other? What they say is totally worthless. So there should be no reason that she would be required to get a get from either of these men. They're contradicting each other. Ella, says the Gemara, the pshat over here in this brayse is different. Lemishri la'alma, for her to be allowed and go get married to anybody, the kula alma le'pligi. Nobody disagrees that she can go get married to whoever she wants. These two men that come and say that this is my wife is pointless, is meaningless. She can go get married to whoever she wants because there's no edim here. The shari, she's allowed. The chiddush of this brayse is a completely different point. Tzricha shnei gitin kidei ligbois ksubasa min hachavila. That if these men come on their own initiative, that's how Rashi explains the Gemara. If they come on their own initiative and give her a get, so then she can go and turn to these men and say, oh, you're giving me a get on your own initiative, and you're saying that I'm your wife? If so, give me the ksuba from this chavila. And the main chiddush of this brayse over here is what Rab Meir and what Rab Meir says. The Amar Rab Meir said, "Metaltali mishtabdi l'ksuba." That even metaltalim, movable items, are also mishubah to a ksuba. Most Tanaim hold that only property, land, is mishubah to a ksuba, not metaltalim. The main chiddush of this brayse was to say that even though true she's not an Eishes Ish at all, but if they want to give her a get on their own initiative, then even the chavila, which is metaltalim, will be mishubah to the ksuba. So the Gemara now concludes the sugya here. My havi Allah. What is with this shaila that we asked? Do you need two eidim for Kidushin or not? Rav Kahana Amar, Ein Chayshishin l'Kedusha. Rav Kahana said, without two eidim, there's nothing to be concerned about the Kidushin. Rav Papa Amar, Chayshishin l'Kedusha. Rav Papa says, yes, we are Chayshish for the Kidushin. Some Rishonim say this is Minatayris, some say it's only Midirabanon. But Rav Papa said, you are Chayshish. Amalei Rav Ashi l'Rav Kahana. So Rav Ashi asked Rav Kahana to explain himself. Why without two edim is there no Kidushin? My daitech, what is your opinion? The alpha is davar mimamin. Probably because you're learning out Gzeira Shava. Just like by money matters, you have to have two edim. It says al pishnayim edim yakim davar. By a matter of Kidushin, it says ervas davar. You also have to have two edim. So if so, don't you say by money matters that you rely on the admittal of a person that's kamei edim? If he admits, then you don't need edim. Shouldn't we say here if the man and the woman both agree that they're married, shouldn't we rely on that as well, just like by money matters? So he answered him and said it's not the same thing. If a person comes along and says that I admit that I owe $1,000, he's not causing any liability to anybody. So therefore we accept it. But here, if a man or woman come and say that we're married, they're causing something, a liability to everyone else. Now she's also to get married to anyone else. Now the relatives will become also to marry this man or to marry this woman. So therefore, if you're causing something, a liability, or something negative to other people, your Haidas Baldin does not help. That's the conclusion of this Gemara. Now, just to point out one major point here, there's still a huge distinction between the requirement of Edim by money and the requirement of Edim by Kiddushin. By money matters, as we're going to see right now here in the Gemara, the requirement of Edim is just to prove what happened. But even if there were no Edim there, what happened, happened. The Edim don't make what happened, happen. But when the sale or the loan, whether there are Edim there or not, what happened, happened. When it comes though to Kiddushin, without two Edim, there is no Kiddushin. The Edim are the ones that make the very Kiddushin itself. That's a Chiddush by Kiddushin. There's a big discussion in Rishonim and Achrayim about this. What's the source for that? Since the Gemara itself says that you learn it from Dava, from money. So the Gemara finishes off here with this distinction, with this story regarding money. Marzutre v'Rav Ades Save b'nei de Rav Mari bar Issa. They were both the sons of Rav Mari bar Issa, so they apparently inherited properties from their father together. So now Polig Nichsaya Bahadi Adodi. They wanted to divide their properties. They all had together. The Yerusha, they wanted to divide it. Also like Hamed Rav Ashi. So they came to Rav Ashi Omrulei. They asked Rav Ashi, Al Pi Shnai Meidem Omrachmana. The Torah says that you only rely on two witnesses. Why? Why do you need two witnesses? Is this the Iboyle Mehadele Matzi Hadribuhu? Is it that if one party here would want to come now and lie and have charata, or come and lie and say that what happened did not happen, so you have to have two Eidim to testify about what happened. So that's the only reason you need Eidim, basically to clarify what actually happened. So therefore they said, Vanan lehadri, we're not concerned, we trust each other, we're not going to have charat there, no one's going to lie about this, so we don't need any two Eidim to divide. Oy dilme, or maybe loy mekayme milse ela besadi. Even in money matters, if you don't have Eidim, what happened does not take effect. If they want to split, the splitting of the possessions of their Yerusha will not take effect until you have Eidim. So do we have to have Eidim here or not? So Rav Ashi answered them, when it comes to money matters, lo ivru sadi el l'shakri. The Eibishter gives the halacha of Eidim, they're only created if there's a fight, there's an argument that comes up later about this. But you don't need Eidim for the actual thing. And as I said, that's the difference. By Kidushin, you must have Eidim for the actual Kidushin itself.